Mountain. All right, well, we'll kick on. I'm sure there'll be a couple more that I'll join in due course. But first of all, thanks all very much for your time. I'm sure last week's update from HMRC was very interesting. And from ourselves' perspective, being one of FCSA's longest standing members, we wanted to ensure that you were getting the detail from FCSA directly rather than a Danbro head of sales or head of umbrella person coming to give you their opinion. So for those that are on the webinar today, I probably know quite a lot of you over the time I've been in the industry. No doubt we'll catch up over the coming weeks and months in terms of what these changes mean. I've also got Dan from Danbro, who's head of umbrella, who looks after our payroll and operational side of the business, who'll also be happy to help support, make any changes to processes, policies to be able to help support any businesses that we are looking forward to working with. And also, I'll hand you over to Deb, who will take us through some slides in terms of topics and agendas for this morning's webinar. Over to you, Deb.
Thanks, Michael. Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining. Those who don't know me, I'm Deb Murphy. I'm Head of Operations at FCSA. I actually used to work for Danbro, so I do have a good and strong relationship with those guys. I know how compliant and how, you know, they want to do the right thing, and I think that's something you can't miss. So I'm just going to start sharing my screen and take you through some slides. Hopefully everyone can see that.
Yeah.
So a bit about FCSA first. We are the leading experts in compliance. We're known in the industry as the gold standard, and I think we are the only not-for-profit in the sector. So FCSA assessments, they're carried out by best in class, and they're carried out by independent assessors. So we use the likes of Ernst & Young, Safri, BDO, JMW solicitors and Brabner's. So we're not checking, nobody's checking their own work. We're using the independent experts to make sure that the assessments are carried out properly. Danbro themselves are accredited for the umbrella model, the limited company advisor model for accountancy, and CIS, self-employed payroll provider. They are live on VeryPay, and this obviously covers Danbro and Trafalgar. So I will come back to that in a moment. Background on where we are and how we've got to the position we're in now. So in 2022, there was a call for evidence. It was headed by the Department of Business and Trade. At the time, they were known as BEIS, and how to regulate the umbrella market. Fast forward 2 years, because nothing happens quickly, and we have a consultation on regulating the umbrella market. Now, this time it was actually conducted by HMT, so Her Majesty's Treasury. So it gave the indication at that point that it was about the money. Policy and process, not so much. It was going to be money driven. Move forward to the October of that year, and the Chancellor announced that option 3 in the price. That recall, option 3 was deemed employer option. So in November of 24, we formed the industry working group, otherwise known as the IWG. We brought in REC, AppScore team, software providers, and other interested parties to basically create a group that had every interest in the supply chain there. So the worker side, REC, AppScore team covered the agency side. Ourselves and Professional Passport covered the umbrella side, and then obviously the software providers themselves. We were trying to look at it as an entire supply chain. We also further engaged Rebecca Seeley-Harris to look at alternatives to option 3, and if option 3 was the way that we was going to go forward, how could that be tweaked as less disruptive and with as little unintended consequences as possible. So we moved forward there to earlier this year of 2025. FCSA, as that was, so we created a document, a big comprehensive report. It's about 70 pages. I will make sure that Dan and Michael have a copy of that So should you want some bedtime reading, we can send that through. And we'll also send over a copy of Rebecca's report as well. So our focus on listing how the deemed employer option of option 3, where the issues were with it. And the other problems, the unintended consequences, the actual impact it would have had to industry. Rebecca's was focused on finding an alternative. We from 24, literally the day the budget came out as option 3, we started the meeting with HMR MPs, peers, and with the support of members as well. So there was a lot of collaboration, trying to get the messages out and getting them to understand the impact that the decision could have caused. We therefore suggested a joint and several liability approach as a solution. It's already a proposal that's in the industry. It's already usable. They use it under one of the vouchers. So it's not something that was new to government, new to HMRC. We were making use of something that they already were aware of. So on the 21st of July this year, last Monday at 5:15, the government gave the draft finance bill. And that was us from 8 o'clock in the morning, pressing refresh, till we actually got this document at 5:15. So it was a long day. The government's policy, we do see it as a win, not only for ourselves, but certainly I know Rebecca feels it that way, seeing as it was her suggestion, but ultimately for the industry as a whole, because the other option would have been a whole lot worse. What does it actually look like? If we think about the actual tax regulations now, they are going to put in a new Chapter 11 TPA, about the tax liability rules, and that is going to come into play from the 6th of April next year. Joint and several liability that's what it's going to be, JSL, and it will cover all the relevant parts of the supply chain. So not only umbrella, it will cover agency and end client, and they will share liability for pay-away payments. It's going to cover the whole amount due. It will cover any shortfalls or underpayment regardless of the reason. And I will just point out here as well, the primary liability will be on the umbrella. So it's not that there's no liability on them. It is their responsibility first and foremost. There are no statutory excuses. The legislation will be automatically applied. And that also means that any smoke screens will be ignored. So that's a good thing. That means that any false constructs, any ways to try and manipulate, any loopholes, they will be ignoring. And any, if they're trying to put offshore entities in that supply chain, they're also going to ignore anything offshore. So if we look now to the broad definition of umbrella companies, they are including employment business and intermediaries, directly engaging workers under a contract of service, so contract of employment. The main thing here to stress is recruiters are not the so there is no change in the employer registration number. It will still be the umbrella. So obviously working with Danbro, you will still be using Danbro or Trafalgar's employee registration number, the pay-away reference number, and all liability and responsibility for law, the employment law and employment rights still remains with the umbrella. So that is still Danbro's, still Trafalgar's responsibility, and that does not change. So it kind of means business as usual. Good news is, there's no changes to employment contracts, no changes required to kids. It is business as usual as far as all this goes. We do want to make a further recommendation with the kids is please do make sure that they write. Always use the terminology assignment rate rather than any other terms, rather than using pay-away reference rate or, gross rate. You need to be using assignment rate. There's further issues that come out down the chain and employment tribunals. So they've mentioned relevant party be in the regulation. So what does it mean? Relevant party is going to be the topmost agency in that chain. So the one that actually holds the contract with the end client. And that will be the entity that becomes liable, even if there are multiple agencies in the chain. So if there's multiple agencies and then you've got a top agency and the end client, that relevant party becomes one closest to the end client. If there's no agency involved, the end client would become liable. If there's an MSP or an agency connected to the umbrella, the end client is liable. And connected in their terminology here means common ownership or common directorship. If that top agency isn't UK based, the end client may still be liable, depending on the chain underneath. And one thing we have sought to get further guidance on, and our lawyers have come back and advised, is MSP will be included in this, even if they are not in the supply chain. Even if they are not in the payment chain. If they're in the supply chain, they will be included. There is a new phrase that's being used in this regulation. That's one that's called purported umbrella. It is very broad, and that isn't a bad thing. When we were doing the very first consultation back in 22, they were talking about it, the definition of umbrella was extremely narrow. And it was one of the things we cautioned them about, because as soon as you make something narrow, somebody can tweak one thing, fall out of scope and carry on doing the pirate behavior that they were doing before. So one thing we were quite pleased to see is it's broad, and it's been done that way to catch the weird and not so wonderful in there. So it be able to umbrella companies, fraudulent arrangements which utilize compliance loopholes, unlawful gross pay models, so things like false self-employment. So we've kind of said, broadly speaking, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's going to be a duck. We'll make further amendments. So there's going to be a change to the Social Security Contributions and Benefits Act of 90, which will allow them to impose JSL for NIC contributions. There's going to be further changes on where fraudulent documents are used as evidence. So where a non-compliant umbrella has created some fraudulent pay slips as evidence to give to the supply chain, say, look, we're doing it all right. They will not be allowed to be used as evidence to prove it was led down a garden path. HMRC will be able to issue Regulation 80. It's an automatic process which enforces the legislation. And what is quite interesting here as well is the genuinely self-employed and those deemed to be employees for tax purposes under chapters 7 through 10 of ITPA are going to be excluded from the new chapter 11. So existing chapters will take precedence. We put together just a few slides just as a visual assistant on where the liability will land. So if in a vanilla supply chain, something not complicated, where you've got a non-compliant umbrella. So that's a non-compliant umbrella who is fraudulently not paying across the liabilities. It's going to be the responsibility of the agency to make them that good. If we look to a complex supply chain, I appreciate these aren't overly complex, could be a lot worse. You have an agency and an emergency, the responsibility sits with the topmost agency in that chain or the top MSP in that chain before it gets to the end client. Where you've got a direct engagement model, so you've got a non-compliant umbrella working directly with an end client, it's going to be the end client that holds that liability. Where there's a connected group, so you've got an uncompliant umbrella agency, it's going to move to end client liability. I'll touch on this one a little bit more after. And where you've got an offshore entity, it's going to ignore that completely and move to the agency, either if it's one above or if there's only one below. Obviously, if there's not an agency there, the end client, like the previous slide explained, would be liable. So how do you protect yourself? I think the first one is you're already working with an FCSA accredited member, so you are off to a great start. Make sure your PSL is an assured provider list of only FCSA accredited providers. Having sight on who is in your, who you're working with is going to be really crucial. Become an FCSA recruiter partner, and we can give you some direct insights and mitigation tools to help. It is a free partnership. I can share some further details with Dan and Michael. They'll be able to provide that, or you can come directly to us as well. But the ones who are already recruiter partners have found it extremely worthwhile. Work with your provider, so work with Danbro to make sure that you've got trust both ways, and that you're mitigating the risk wherever you can. Look to keep ahead of the curve with FCSA's Diligence Hub. That's the platform that shares the compliance pack, and it's automatically there for you. So you can see the documents in real time. As Danbro upload them, you can see them. You can verify payroll accuracy and HMRC remittances with VeriPay. So if you're not already on that, obviously Danbro and Trafalgar are both users of that service. I'm quite sure they'd be more than happy to share the links with you so that you can get access to that as well. And they are very low cost services which do a bulk of the heavy lifting for you. I think the further to due diligence is key. So, robust process, be proactive in your due diligence. We certainly can help our recruiter partners build on existing processes to strengthen them. But making sure that you have a robust process in place is going to be crucial. So you're only working with people who you trust. I think it goes without saying, don't fall for unrealistic incentives. Compliant umbrellas, just put them. Don't fall outside regulation schemes. The rules came in at 5 o'clock on Monday of last week, and by Thursday we'd already seen a scheme which won't work. But we'd already seen something saying, "Oh, it's okay. We'll get you outside of this. Don't worry. There's no liability to you. There's no risk whatsoever." We gave it to the lawyers. The lawyers looked at it and said, "Yep, that's a purported umbrella. It will be covered." So people already are trying to find ways around the rules. And like we said at the very beginning, they've been designed in a way to not let payroll pirates, find the loopholes. It means they will be easier to spot as well. So certainly by ourselves, and wherever we spot bad behaviour, we report it. And by HMRC. And that links into the Fair Work Agency, which will be coming into play in 2027. The remit of ESI, so easy, which will in turn become the Fair Work Agency. So we've put together some FAQs. The questions that we've had already. Will MSPs be on the hook? Yes. So even if they're not in the payment chain, yes, they will still be. We should probably to just yes, since we've had that confirmed. When will this hit Parliament? The finance bill is October, November time. So we are working on the lobbying, still making sure it is as good as it can be. And there's no nasty changes in there, and it's clear, really, really clear and succinct about what they're expecting. We've had questions about liability for that. Now that is under Kittle and I. There isn't a VAT notice already in play, so anybody wanting to use that as a new loophole, HMRC are already pursuing, so they're not going to get away with that one either. One of the things we are going to work with HMRC, the policy team, to just strengthen is the element on the apprenticeship levy. It isn't mentioned in the guidance that came out. We have had it come from apprenticeship. Actually, we had it come yesterday that apprenticeship levy will be caught and JSL will apply in the same way. But we will make sure that obviously that feeds into the paperwork as such when it's issued later on this year. Some agencies have already had approaches about flat rate VAT schemes. Are they legit? I think our response to that is quite clearly rarely. And we've suggested that the barge pole rule should be applied, as in avoid. And has the government just established what effectively is a self-policing tax regime? I think the short answer to that is yes. The agencies will be hesitant to work with non-compliant operators moving forward, purely to protect themselves, as it should be. I think you've probably all come across times when you've had conflict with another agency, and they've been able to undercut purely on the basis of non-compliant operators, knowing then that the liability will be theirs. The chances are they won't be doing that moving forward. So do we see behavioural changes in the industry? Yes, we do think there will be a combination of, and we're already starting to see this. So we've already seen end clients and MSPs, or the top agency in that chain, requiring the use of FCSA accredited providers. And we're starting to see that more and more. We think a massive uplift, proactive and robust due diligence, so using more external tools like VeriPay, which is payslip checking, and Diligence Hub, which is your compliance pack. There's thoughts that end clients who are direct to umbrella may decide to put an agency in the chain to take the liability away from them, or the potential liability away from them, I should say. Because, like I said, the liability is only there if he's not doing what they should be doing. So compliant umbrellas will be doing everything they can to prove to you that they are paying and everything is as it should be, and are able to evidence that to you. The non-compliant ones will be trying to avoid evidencing and trying to pull the wool over your eyes. We are seeing, we've started to see this in this last week, where some end clients are saying that agency workers need to actually go through an umbrella level in the chain. And end clients, MSPs, certainly are requiring due diligence. There's more requests coming through now from the top level down. You may start seeing that end clients are asking what you're doing about due diligence. So having something like Diligence Hub and VeriPay, you can then evidence to them the extra steps that you're taking. And we've started to hear, and we've been involved in this for quite a while regarding throughout the supply chain and how that may work. And so those conversations, certainly on FCSA side, are moving forward and will continue to until there's something there in the chain and we're ready. So that is all the slides from me. I'm just going to stop sharing and say thank you very much.